All right. John Park here in my workshop, and it looks like maybe the stream is streaming. So if I can get a check-in from the good people of YouTube and Discord, let me know if YouTube has started streaming. For some reason, it needed to get kicked a little bit before it was convinced that there was actually a stream flowing in. Hey, you see my face. Hi. All right, awesome. So I'm going to switch over to the workshop camera because the camera I'm on right now I think is a little laggy. Ooh, and I'm getting CPU pinging up at 100%, so I'm hoping it is not too stuttery. Let's hide this. Let's go over there and let me know. It's working on Twitch but keeps freezing. All right, well let me know how that is looking to you. I'm going to be keeping an eye on my computer over there to see if the broadcasting icon goes red. I can see that the CPU cycles is pegged at red, which is not good. But I am finally getting a new computer. I've been saying this for a while, but I'm finally getting a new one. This one is like 8 years old or 7 years old, so I'm finally going to be, I hope, streaming with a little more health. It takes a bit of CPU to do the transcoding on the way off to the internet to you guys. So let me pop up my chat over here on, there we go. Background sound is on. The sound is still on. Is my music playing? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, it is. Sorry. Hey! All right, now it should just be me. How's my voice level? Let me know in the chat. It looks like it should be healthy. I don't want to peek out too much on you, but also, just you wait. We'll have some really high RPM power tools running later, and then we'll all regret the microphone running. Maybe I'll hide it, cover it. Yeah, all right. Hey, Noah and Pedro. Aren't you guys at Disneyland or Disney World today? What's going on? Well, I'm glad you're here. So today we're going to do some lock-picking tool building, making lock-picking tools. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I've been doing this since I was a kid, like in 8th grade or 7th grade, or maybe earlier I started getting into lock-picking. And it's a fun exercise in working with your hands, working with some tools, and it's also pretty useful if you want to make picks, particularly ones you're having a hard time finding for purchase. Obviously, you can buy picks, but sometimes for a particular lock, you want to make a unique pick, or tension wrench, or tensioner. So let me switch the little overhead camera on. How about to, whoops, this one. In fact, I'm going to swap places with that one. Okay, so here you can see, this is just an anvil, a little railroad track anvil that I have. Let me show you what we're going to be making. So there's a couple of tools that we care about, and those are going to be a tensioner, or tension wrench, and there's a slightly different style of one. Those are what we're going to use to turn the keyway. If you're lost, if you're confused, check out my last few videos on Instagram, as well as my live stream from 2 weeks ago, where I go into some depth on picking pin tumbler locks. So we're making tools for picking pin tumbler locks. I'll also work on wafer tumblers. So those are tensioners, sometimes called tension wrenches, and then some people get all angry and say it's not tension, it's torsion or torque or something, but unfortunately that's not the term of art, so you got to put up with people calling it a tensioner or a tension wrench. So we're going to make tension wrenches and we're going to make picks. So a couple of popular types of picks to build are a diamond pick. So you can see it looks like it's a little diamond shape at the end, a little triangle there, a little half diamond. A hook for lifting pins, and maybe some form of a rake, such as this one, which is like a 4-hump Bogota. That's a handmade one. These ones I'm showing you here are sort of store-bought ones that I bought many years ago in the 80s, actually. And we'll talk a little bit about handles for your picks and some styles. I built kind of a unique style on this Bogota here. So let's see. Oh, cool, John Schaffstell, thanks. He got his hard copy of Hackspace magazine and saw the article I wrote on laser cut enclosures. Very cool. Okay, so let's talk first about tensioners, tension wrenches, and making them. So we're going to use a couple of different types of material to make most of the things that we're going to make here. And one is going to be street sweeper blades. So these you will find if you have a big buy and cleans a street. If you look in the gutters or near the sidewalk curb in a lot of cities, you'll find these things. And once you start looking for them, you kind of start to see them everywhere. And so those street sweepers clean, but they also shed these whiskers off. And so if you look, you'll find them, and they're actually a pretty good sort of spring steel. They work pretty well for lockpicks as well as for tensioners. With a little bit of work and a little bit of care, a little treatment, we can get very usable stuff out of these. And then another easier and better material, I think, for a tension wrench in particular is this strip of metal that comes out of a windshield wiper blade. So if you look at how windshield wiper blades on a car are made, they've got a strip of metal that runs through them, and it's a bit thicker than the street sweeper blades, but it also is a little less brittle. It bends a little more easily. But we're actually going to be using heat to help us bend these so we don't go and break things. So let's start off with a quick demonstration of what I'm talking about as far as not just going and bending. So if we grab, in fact, I'm going to put on some safety glasses so that I don't poke my eye out. If you take a look here at a typical piece of street sweeper blade, also some people call them whiskers. My friend Kent Barnes always talks about finding his street whiskers. So if you see here, if I try to bend this, it's going to snap pretty easily. So we don't want that. So in the case of a wiper blade, they will bend a little better without heat. But what we're going to do is we're going to heat that up in order to make a tension wrench. So let's get, I'm going to get the other overhead camera going as well so that we can see this in action. So we'll start off with a propane burner of some kind, a propane torch. That's a pretty common one. Also there's these, I think these are meant more for kitchen stuff, but they're actually pretty nice. My sort of regular propane torch doesn't have a self-igniting sparking nozzle on it, so it's a little slower to get going. This one has a nice little piezo sparker inside of it. So if you can, let me switch these cameras for a second. Go to that. So you'll open the gas on that. You should be able to see the flame there. Turn it off. It kind of turns off slowly. When you crank that closed, it takes a little while for the gas to run through. And so what I'll recommend is having a little container of water, which, what, have I lost it now? I had a little, too little perhaps. Oh, it's over here. So you want a little container of water that you can use to quench the metal as it gets hot. And in this case, since we're not cutting right now, we're just bending, what we'll do is we'll heat it up to sort of cherry red glowing hot, bend it, and then quench it, and that will help us harden the metal back into this new place, into this new shape. So recommended tools are some pliers, and I like to use a vice grip. Let me move this up here so you're in camera view. I like to use a vice grip to hold the sweeper blade. Let's get one that's a decent size. And if you look in the little camera here, you can see this one is kind of dinged up, and it's been, you know, well used to sweep the streets. So it's not looking so shiny. It's a nice thing to clean these up and put a nice polish on them so that they move easily into the keyway. Let me see if I can get this camera over here a little bit. So we're in both cameras, sort of. I'm going to turn this. There we go. So with the tension wrench, you're going to end up with, here's an example one I made earlier today. I didn't clean it, and it's kind of a pain to get in and clean inside of this corner here, and we're going to put some twists in it too. So what I recommend is clean it before you start working. And let's see, I'll hold this on this wood. I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm going to have this on the wood so you can see it. And I'm just going to take either a flap wheel on a drill bit, or for something a little more aggressive, you could start with like a wire disc. You could also do this with sandpaper. And that's essentially what this is. So I'm going to hold this. And you'll see that shines up pretty nice, pretty quickly. See that there? Just hold it carefully so it doesn't go flying. And I'll flip it over and do the same. And I don't have an easy way to mute my mic, so sorry for the noise. It's going to be a noisy one today. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's get the sides. For the tensioner, this is largely aesthetic. When you start making the picks, you really do want a really smooth finish on them so that they slide easily inside of the lock. Okay, let's now, I'm going to go to a big close-up. I say, there we go, big close-up. And what we're going to do is grab the piece of metal in our vice grip, and this does a couple things. It's going to be a heat sink to prevent heating up beyond the point where we want to bend this. It's also going to protect you from getting burned if you hold, actually let's go like this. If you try to hold that piece of metal when you start heating it up, it's going to burn you at some point. So I'm going to get a nice tight grip on that there. And then what I'll do is I'll heat it, and when I see it glows red hot, I can either bend it on the anvil here, or if you have some other surface that won't get scarred up and burned, or you can grab your other pliers and put a 90-degree bend in it. And so what we're deciding is how deep into the keyway do we want this tool to go. And you usually need about another 1/4 inch beyond that for where you're gripping it, because of the heat sinking properties of the vice grip, the glowing red part is going to be like a 1/4 inch away from there. So I think that's a decent length there. A slightly long one is what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to use this little butane burner guy. It's probably not as hot as that propane, but it is easier for me to light one-handed right now. So turn that on. Froze again. Uh-oh. Let's see. Let me know in the chat if we're still froze. Let's see, that was at 110. That was a few minutes ago. I hope this is not frozen. All right, here we go. You got to be patient with this part because we want it to really be glowing red hot. Starting to get hot. That's good. And I'm going to do this one with the pliers. So I'm going to set this down, point the flame away from something, and give myself a nice 90-degree bend. And then I'm going to quench it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is heat up the other side, and here I'm going to put a 90-degree twist. And what this will do is make the tension wrench just a little easier to hold against your finger. You can see a nice twist in there. And I'm going to drop that and quench it. Turn off my burner. Okay. So there you can see, it's pretty nice looking. And now really for this, what you can do is kind of clip it off to the length that you want, or you could go ahead and make a second end to it. So sometimes you'll want to have the same sort of width of stock for a tensioner, but have a short and a long, these are actually almost identical, but a short and a long piece at the ends of them so that you have a couple of different choices. So I'm going to leave this one at this length, and then all I'm going to do now is just kind of pretty it up with some sandpaper. So we can take, what do I have here? This is like a 350 or 400 grit. And so just clean that up a little bit. And I'm actually going to clip this to length at this point, say maybe about that long. I'll make this a sort of slightly longer one. And you can either just bend and clip, twist it. It tends to get a little bend at the end there that's hard to get out, or you can cut it with some diagonal cutters. It's just going to fly, so be careful. I could use bigger cutters for this. Pew! There goes a piece. So that's straight. It's got a sharp edge though, so I'm going to go ahead and sand that off too. Okay, and there we have a nice little tensioner. So I'm going to swap cameras for the big main workshop one for a second here. And now we can see, actually let's go to I changed my mind. Let's go to this overhead here. There we go. So now we can see our tensioner in action. See what I was talking about? When I'm pushing down on this, instead of pushing against the sort of thinner edge of it like a sort of more traditional tension wrench. Here's one of the first ones I ever got. That one, you're pushing, now you shouldn't be pushing too hard on a tension wrench, but it's a little more comfortable to have the flat side there with that little stylish twist that we put in. Where'd it go? I just lost it. That's not that one. There it is. It's the same color as that little anvil. So now, let me grab a pick. You can see I've got a nice ability to sort of feather and temper my tension with that. There we go. Got it open. And then one of the fun things about making your own tools is that you can also get kind of fancy. Let me go to the little anvil shot here again. You can get kind of fancy with these if you have a particular lock that puts your hand in an awkward position. You could put a little curve in this. You could heat it up a little, or maybe even if you're doing a gentle curve without heating it, you can redirect this thing so that it has some sort of a specific shape that's useful for the way you're picking the lock. I've also found, I'll show you this with this Bogota pick, sometimes depending on what you're doing, it's helpful to have a little loop in your pick so that you can put a finger through it. Sometimes you will, with Bogotas, because you tend to freak out and move them a lot, you'll drop them. This just kind of keeps it hanging on your pinky. You could do the same thing with a tension wrench. If you're putting super light tension and being very careful, sometimes you'll just pop the wrench out. So you could start with a long piece and put a little circle in it somewhere. There's some ideas, you know, they might be fun to experiment with, and they're essentially free other than a few minutes of your time to do the work of heating and bending. So that is the basic tensioner. Now let's also let me check. Can anyone tell me, are we frozen or are we good still? Oh, it looks like I wonder if I'm not connected on Discord. What happened here? I'm going to go over to the computer and check. I hope I haven't been talking into a black hole. And are we connected on? I'm going to send a quick test over here to... And I'm going to open up a, where'd that YouTube go? There's the Facebook one. Hello. There's the YouTube one. Sorry for the delay. Actually, my system CPU is pegged at 100%, so I worry that it might choke and starve. Working fine here. Okay, thank you, ArcSecond. Are you watching on YouTube, ArcSecond? That's my other question. Oh, let's see. There was this YouTube stream. And it says, verdict, we're good, F426. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Sorry for the delay there. I just get a little suspicious when my iPad wasn't updating over there. Okay, so let's take a look now. It's a very similar process, but I'll show you with a windshield wiper blade. You can, let me go ahead and cut this here. Put on my goggles. And you can see this bends a lot more. It doesn't just snap as readily as the sweeper blade does. So here, let me try it. Actually, I haven't tried this in a while. You may be able to get away without the heat. It could weaken the tool, but here is, yeah, wiper blade has a lot more springy, bendy to it, and I think that's going to hold the position. So you could get away with, I usually will heat these, but you could get away, obviously, that worked real well. I don't think that looks that weakened, not for what we're doing. Let's try it. Let's grab a lock. I'm just going to grab this one again. And to that overhead. So one thing you'll note is that this is a thicker piece of material than that sweeper blade, which sometimes is nice on a tension wrench. I like the picks usually to be on the thinner side, and the tension wrench, it's okay if it's a little thicker. Sometimes it'll grab, or if you're doing top of keyway stuff, it needs to be almost as thick as that keyway. But that has kind of a different feel versus this thin one here. And you could see we could also put that little twist in it. Actually, let's try that. Let's see, can we put the twist in this without heating? I think we can. So let's go to Anvil Cam and put a little twist in that. Let's grab another pair of pliers. You can see that works pretty well. I didn't go far enough though. Obviously heating is going to be the more effective strategy, because when that metal is red hot, it just bends where you want it to. But if you don't have a good heat source, or you need to do this in a jam, well, if you need to do it in a jam, you're probably not going to bother with the little twist there. But that works just fine. So that's a couple of ways of doing tension wrenches. Now, if there's any questions about those, let me know in the chats. Looks like maybe my iPad disconnected from the internet. Let me aha, I grabbed a bad Wi-Fi. That's what happened. There we are.